バーンさん、今日はお越しいただきましてありがとうございます。
Nice to see you. Thank you.
新技術が海外、日本と海外で、コンサルティングを始めて35年経ちました。そういった設立当時のことを知ってる方もだいぶ少なくなってきました。あなたは新技術の最初のクライアントであり、アメリカでのリーンのパイオニアでもあると思っています。ぜひ新技術のこれまでの歴史だとか、指導のついて、そういったことを率直なご意見をお聞かせいただければと思っています。よろしくお願いします。
Okay. Well, I started my first lean implementation really when I was the general manager at the General Electric company. We were making light bulbs, and we sent some people to Japan to see what was going on. This was after the oil crisis of 1979, and it seemed like Toyota sailed through the crisis with no problems. So people were going to visit and see how did they do that. So we sent a couple of people from the lighting business group of General Electric, and when I became the general manager, we decided that we would try a simple Kanban approach. The supplier plant was 45 minutes from my plant, and they were making little arc tubes that went into the high intensity bulbs that we made. So we bought a truck. We created Kanban cards for each little carton of arc tubes. And every day the truck would come, and we would give them the Kanban cards from the day before, and they would bring them back the next day. It was very, very simple. It was probably, I think it was probably the first example of the Toyota system at the General Electric company at the time. And we found some amazing things. First of all, my inventory went from 43 days to 3. And my supplier plant, which was also part of the lighting group, they went from about 60 days to 0 days. They didn't have any inventory. But no one in GE at the time really cared about that. They didn't care about inventory. They cared about make the earnings only. And so we didn't get any benefit from it. But what we found was once we reduced the inventory, everything else got better. Our quality was better, our productivity was better, our shop floor was cleaner, our people were happier, our customer service was better. So everything got better once we dropped the inventory. So I said, gee, any company I run from now on, I want to learn more about this and figure out how to do this. So after I left General Electric, I wound up as a group executive for a company called the Danaher Corporation. And at Danaher, we had about 13 different companies, all doing different things. I was responsible for 8 of them. And my office was in the factory of one of those companies, a company called Jacobs Brake. And Jake Brake was in terrible shape. And we decided that we were going to try and improve it by using what we call just in time. At that point in time, it was just known as just in time. Later, it became the Toyota production system. And then eventually, in 1996, it was started to become known as Lean. But this was back in 1985. And so the guy that was running Jake Brake at the time was a guy named George Konenzecker. And he and I said, we're going to try and use this just-in-time approach to see if we can improve Jake Brake. And Jake Brake had a sister company called Jacobs Chuck, which was in South Carolina. Jacobs Brake was in Hartford, Connecticut, basically. So we employed a U.S. consultant, and they said, "Oh, we know all about this. We can help you do this." Well, they were like a typical big consultant. They charged a lot of money. They had a lot of PowerPoint presentations. They took a long time, etc. So, but we kept pushing, and we actually created a couple of cells, a couple of production cells, the first ones ever. And as we went along, we started painting the floor and painting the ceiling and painting everything to make it look cleaner and different. Because when we started, the factory looked like a cave. It was terrible shape. So anyway, at the time we were trying to learn more and more about just in time, and we came across a book called Kaizen. It was written by a guy named Masaki Yamai, and it explained a lot of the Toyota approach. And then we started reading books by Ono and Shingo, and so we were trying to learn more and more about this. And then it turned out that Yamai was going to have a conference in Hartford about Kaizen. And it was just down the street from us, a couple of towns away. So Conan Saker signed up 5 of his people, and I went for the first 2 days. So he had to bring someone to help him run this Kaizen. And he brought Shingijutsu. Now, this was maybe a year after Shingijutsu started, something like that. It was in early 1987. And I think they started in 1986, just in Japan. We went to the first couple of days, and the first 3 people in Shingijutsu, of course, were Mr. Iwata, who was the president, Mr. Nakao, and Mr. Takanaka. And later, Mr. Niwa was going to come on board, but he needed to stay in Toyota for another year or so. So there were going to be 4, but when we first met them, there were only 3. And so we listened to them for 2 days, and we said, wow, you know, these are the guys who invented this. These are the people who work with Ono to establish just in time in the first place. And they created a lot of the things that people wrote about and that people talked about and that made this successful. In fact, we were told that when Ono came up with the idea of a pull system and Kanban, no one could figure out how to make Kanban work. Apparently, the one who did was Mr. Niwa. He figured out how to do that. So we said, boy, you know, these are the right guys. If we want to learn this, we need to have them teach us. So I only could go the first 2 days, and the last 3 days of this seminar were going to be in somebody's factory. So Conan Saker, he had the assignment, okay, let's get them to work for us. So he took them out at night for a steak dinner. He brought them to the factory one night around midnight. They caused a big ruckus. They came back after work, after the seminar on Thursday when I could be there. And we walked, Conan Saker and I walked around. And we said, well, what do you think? And they just said, oh, 50%. We said, 50%? What do you mean 50%? 50% of everything. And we can reduce 50% of everything. And we said, oh, that's very good, because we were thinking maybe 30%. We knew we had a big mess. And so later on, though, we asked Mr. Iwata, said, Iwata-san, why did you say 50%? And he said, well, because we didn't think you'd really like the real number. So, of course, it was way more than 50%. So anyway, they came back on Saturday morning before they left town. And we met again, and we said, you know, we really want you to come and help us. And they said, well, no, look, we're too old. It's too far away. We don't speak English. And we said, but we have very good steak dinners. We have very good lobster. And we have golf. We have lots of golf. And they said, golf. We like golf. And so I had to go to Japan a month or so later with Jacob's Chuck, because we were selling Jacob's Chucks to Makita and a bunch of the other, Hitachi, a bunch of the other drill manufacturers in Japan. So we arranged to have dinner with Mr. Iwata in Tokyo, I think, and he agreed. He said, okay, well, we will come and try. So we can come during Golden Week or something like that. We don't have any consulting in Japan, so we'll come. So we agreed, and we set up the trip. And then before we left dinner, he said, we will show you manufacturing magic. And we said, oh, magic, we like magic. So anyhow, they came, and we had to arrange translators, of course,
Mm-hmm.
and we decided the first visit would be in Clemson, South Carolina, in our Jacob's Chuck plant, and they were only there for 4 days. So 1 day in Clemson, and then 3 more days at Jake Break in Hartford. So we were able to get a few translators from the University of Clemson, South Carolina. There's a university there. We said, now how do we work with these guys? We don't know anything about this. So we said, well, first we'll give them an introduction, and then we'll give them a half-hour presentation on a drill chuck, and then we'll take a plant tour. That will maybe take an hour and a half, and then we'll see where we go from there. So we did the introductions. That was fine. We started the presentation on drill chucks. We have those in Japan too. What's next? So that took no time. And we said, oh, plant tour. Oh, we like plant tour. Let's go. So out we go in the plant. And we only got maybe 100 yards, not very far. Usually this plant would have taken about a half hour to take somebody around. We got about 100 yards. And Iwata puts his hand up and says, okay, we've seen enough. Let's go back. I said, but Mr. Iwata, we just got out. No, we've seen enough. Come on. So we go back in the conference room, and Iwata-san gets up on the board, and in great big letters he writes the words, "No good."